Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Operations and Public Safety Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. We have quite a few items on the agenda, so we are going to go ahead and jump right in. And the first thing up is roll call. Kim, will you please call the roll?
Thank you. Council President Troutner.
Here.
Councilmember Boyce.
Here.
Councilmember Fincher.
Here.
Councilmember Kaur. Councilmember Larmer.
Here.
Councilmember Michaud.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kim. Just some housekeeping items to take care of. Any changes to the agenda? All right, seeing none, if I could have an approval of the agenda, please.
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve the agenda for today. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've approved the agenda, and next up we have to approve the minutes from our November 2nd, 2021 meeting. Are there any questions about those? Seeing none, a motion is in order.
Thank you, Madam President. I would move to approve the minutes for November 2nd, 2021. Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, everyone. We will move on now to the business of our meeting this afternoon. The first item is the payment of bills. Those come to the council members through email. We have an opportunity to look those over. Anyone have any questions about those? All right, seeing none.
Madam President, I would move for approval of payment of bills. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the bills. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, wonderful. We will move on next to our information-only item, which is the September 2021 financial report. Welcome to you, Michelle.
Hi. Good afternoon, Council. I'm Michelle Ferguson, the Financial Planning Manager, and I will be presenting an overview of the September 2021 monthly financial report. Highlighted on this slide are the sales tax revenues. And sales tax revenues continue to come in very strong. On average, monthly sales tax revenues are coming in higher than last year at this time. September 2021 general fund sales tax revenues totaled slightly over $2 million in the general fund, which is $175,000 or 9% higher than in the month of September in 2020. If this trend continues, the city could receive over $20 million in sales tax revenues in the general fund, which would be about $350,000 more than was received in 2020, which the 2020 revenues included $1.75 in annexation revenues.
Michelle, just a quick question. I can understand why it was a little bit lower last year. Is it even higher than 2019 or? I'm just wondering if we're doing really great in that.
So sales tax revenues in 2019 included the full almost $5 million in annexation revenues. Okay. So we're not quite
Don't
there.
have that
totaled $27 million, but if you excluded that, we'd be higher.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so on this slide, I've highlighted utility tax revenues just because we haven't talked about them very much lately. And overall, the utility taxes are going to come in on budget. Electric, gas, and garbage utility taxes are expected to come in slightly over budget, while the telephone utility tax is going to come in slightly under budget. The telephone utility taxes have been slowly declining in revenues over the last few years, and that trend is expected to continue as residents stop using landline phones. Okay. And now on this slide is the general fund year-to-year monthly comparison. And with the year 3 quarters gone, you would expect to see about 75% of the budgeted revenues received or less than 75% of the expenditure budget spent. As you can see, overall revenues are at 67%. This is because property tax, B&O tax, other taxes, and miscellaneous. So those have been highlighted. And even though these revenues seem like they're coming in under budget, it's mostly due to timing of when we receive these revenues. And they're actually, 3 of them are coming in higher than they were in 2020. So the second half of the property tax revenues and the third quarter B&O revenues are received in October, and those revenues are going to be over $15 million, which will raise that percentage over 75%. The one expenditure category at the bottom that's coming in lower than 60% is in the non-departmental category. And this is where transfers out are recorded, and the bulk of those transfers out are done in October. So that number will go up in the next report. The next 3 slides show the year-to-year comparison of the other funds. And there aren't too many variances, but I kind of wanted to point out a few funds that have a variance above 25%. So the Capital Resources Fund has a high variance for revenues, and it was budgeted to use $2 million of fund balance in 2021. But early estimates are showing that the fund balance will actually increase by over $6 million by year end. This is due to the restoration of the SST revenues, so $3.6 million, as well as the sales tax that's expected to come in $1.3 million over budget, and REIT revenues that through September that have already come in $3.5 million over budget. Below that are the criminal justice revenues that have been highlighted. And the criminal justice fund was budgeted to use nearly $500,000 of fund balance in 2021, but with the extra revenues for the red light cameras and the school zone cameras, it's expected that the fund balance will actually increase by $1.2 million by year end. And then we never really talk about the other operating funds, so this is where the City ARCS program shows up, and it's showing a 4.9% negative variance. And that's not for any particular reason, it's just a timing issue of when they spend things. And if they don't spend their budget, it'll just fall into fund balance and they can use it in future years. At the top of this slide, the Special Assessment Debt Service Fund is highlighted. And these are where the LID payments are receipted and then allocated out to projects. And the variance is just a timing issue of when those funds move in and out of that fund. And the Golf Fund is highlighted as well. And the city received in 2020 the second payment from the sale of the Par 3. So that's the variance for the revenues. And then those revenues fell into fund balance. And in 2021, they were expended for transfers out to different various golf projects. And the last fund we'll talk about is the Liability Insurance Fund. The revenues are 277% higher than they were in 2020, and that was due to the $4.4 million transfer from the general fund that was done earlier this year to cover a shortfall due to rising costs of liability insurance, claims experience, and required fund balance. Are there any questions?
Anyone have questions for Michelle? All right, thank you very much. Next up, we have a revision to terms of land use and planning board members.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, committee members. The City Council adopted a new ordinance governing boards and commissions earlier this year. A key feature of that ordinance was to impose term limits for board members and commissioners. So prior to the adoption of that ordinance, the term lengths and the term end dates for members did not always align, because at that point it was the term end date that was the most important to make them align with one another. But now under the new ordinance, the term lengths become the most important because that's used in calculating eligibility to serve successive terms. That same night that Council adopted the new ordinance, Council also confirmed 2 appointments to the Land Use and Planning Board, and those confirmations created terms that were actually longer than 3 years. So for the purpose of simplifying administration of the new ordinance and calculating term lengths, staff recommends that you reset the term end dates for Land Use and Planning Board members Sally McDonough and Michael Purwall from December 31st, 2024 to July 5th, 2024.
All right, anyone have questions for Derek? All right.
Okay,
motion would be in order.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I would move to revise the term expirations of Land Use and Planning Board members Sally McDonough and Michael Purwell from December 31st, 2024 to July 5th, 2024.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Derek. Next up, we have the 2022 Community Development Block Grant.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Dinah Wilson with the Human Services Division to present the 2022 Action Plan. The action plan goes before HUD earlier than the year so that we can get it to them in time. And it's basically our plan for how we will spend our Community Development Block Grant. We anticipate that we will receive the same amount in 2022 as we did in this year, which is $1,159,798. We typically allocate up to 20% of the money to planning and administration, which mainly goes to our personnel cost. And we also can use some of that for planning and working with our nonprofits. 15% goes to public services, and we use the remainder for capital projects. Most of that goes to our home repair program. We are proposing that $693,868 goes to our home repair program, and we're recommending the full 15%, which would be $170,970 for our public service programs, which are the projects you're very familiar with: shelter, housing, those things, food. So that's what we're proposing to do. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you very much, Dinah. Does anyone have any questions about this before we move forward with a vote? Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you for your presentation. This doesn't have to do with that, but I want to let the council know that Dinah won an award. She received the Catholic Community Services of Washington 2021 Jack White Spirit of Caring Award for her impact on Catherine's and Rita's House, which is a transitional housing facility for homeless women in recovery from substance abuse. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Michaud. That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Madam President, I would move to adopt the Community Development Block Grant 2022 Annual Action Plan, that including funding allocations and contingency plans, and authorize the mayor to execute the appropriate certifications and agreements.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we are continuing on in the agenda. Up next is the renewal of the small government enterprise agreement with ESRI Incorporated.
Good evening, council members. My name is Somen Palit. I'm the Technology Innovation Manager in IT. I have with me Catherine Crook, our Enterprise GIS Manager. We are presenting a motion to authorize the mayor to sign another 3-year agreement with Esri, or the Environmental Systems Research Institute Incorporated. This will allow us to continue to use the Esri tools and services, as well as software that we use to manage our geospatial data sets and applications. And this amount will not exceed $363,330 paid out in 3 equal annual installments. So this is just an extension of the MSA we signed back in 2018 for another 3 years.
All right, anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Councilmember Boyce.
Is this for the same amount as previous contract?
It has increased a little bit, I think about $10,000 a year.
$10,000.
Because of our size. As our population increases, that's how they bill us.
Makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Seeing none, Madam President, I would move to authorize the mayor to sign a 3-year contract renewal with Environmental Systems Research Institute, Incorporated, in an amount not to exceed $363,330, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the IT director and city attorney.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have amendments to Services Agreement for IT temporary staff.
Thank you and good evening, Madam President, members of the council. Brian Rambonga, PMO Supervisor here for your Information Technology Department. I'm here to present for authorization amendments to consultant services agreements with 4 staffing and recruitment agencies. Those agencies are Viri Technology, Protingent Tech Systems, and Robert Half International. This also includes authorization with entering into a new agreement with Affirma LLC. These agencies specialize in placing technology professionals in project and contract to hire positions. The IT department seeks approval to both extend existing contracts and to enter into new contracts in the future to support the city's authorized projects and service needs, so long as those costs associated with those contracts can be paid for within previous budgets established and authorized by council through the current biennium. The city will continue to pay consultants based on time and materials for services provided through December 31st, 2022 in a total collective amount. IT will of course monitor fees charged in relation to this collective budgeted amount to ensure the amounts paid under all temporary consulting contracts do not exceed that collective amount, which council has already approved as part of the 21-22 operational and capital budgets. With that, it concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you. Any reason why you guys not approving with SciCon staffing? Are you just changing the contract with them or what?
Yeah, they decided not to work with us any further. We haven't been able to pick up any contractors with that agency over the last 2 years.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Seeing none, Madam President, I would move to authorize the mayor to sign contracts and contract amendments with temporary employment agencies, subject to final contract terms and conditions acceptable to the IT director and city attorney, and so long as the costs associated with those contracts can be paid for through the budget previously established and approved by council for the current biennium.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Quick question.
Yes.
How do you guys go about measuring the effectiveness of your contractors? You got some type of measurement tool to make sure they're meeting your expectation?
We do, as they're applied to capital projects and even operations. We typically look at the deliverables that they're producing. We hire project managers, business analysts, and as we typically get through our contracts, our contractors do all those projects. We do look at and assess and evaluate their deliverables for us.
If you're not happy with a particular PM, do you work with the agency to change them out?
We do. We do. The contract and the agreements that we're engaged in allows us for that flexibility to be pretty mobile when adjusting or bringing in and taking out a contractor. Welcome.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion will carry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we've got through all of the things that need to be authorized through council. Next up, we have some information-only items. The first one is information on the red light programs. So welcome to Assistant Chief Hemmen.
Madam President and council members, I'm here to talk briefly about the red light camera program that we have and the possible increase of the cameras. We recently conducted a study after talking with our traffic section and traffic engineering to look at the next 6 intersections in our city that has the most accidents. The study revealed or reviewed all lanes of travel on these intersections. So the direction and approaches, and from now on I'm going to call the approach. So they studied 24 different approaches in the city. There's 6 different intersections they reviewed. The intersections of Southeast 208th Street and 108th Avenue Southeast, Southeast 240th Street and 116th Avenue Southeast, West Meeker Street and Washington Avenue North, Kent Kangley Road and 116th Avenue Southeast, South 228th Street and 68th Avenue South, and South 212th Street and 68th Avenue South. The study revealed that during an average month period, the violations for each approach to these intersections would cover the cost to have a camera there. And our recommendation is to follow the data from the study and place cameras on all approaches to each of these intersections. A little bit about the costs. Each camera that we would put up on an intersection costs $4,750 to be monitored each month. If an intersection is large enough that you would need 2 cameras, it adds an extra $1,000 per that approach. Out of the 6 intersections, they looked at each one of those and estimated the infractions per day that would occur at each one of the approaches. If you would like, I can go through each intersection with how many infractions, how much the cost would be, and then how much revenue comes from that per month, if you'd like me to go through all of those.
I would.
Okay. So Southeast 208th and 108th Avenue Southeast, they figured it would be about 16.32 infractions a day, which equals out to be $490 a month. The revenue for the infractions would be about $66,585, and the total cost for the cameras per month is $21,000, which goes out to be a net revenue per month of about $45,585. For the intersection at Southeast 240th Street and 116th Avenue Southeast, they figured out about 408 infractions a month. The revenue from those infractions would be about $55,488. The cost for the camera per month is $19,000, and the net revenue would be about $36,488. At West Meeker Street and Washington Avenue North, they figured about 513.3 infractions a month. The revenue for the infractions per month would equal out to be about $69,808. The cost for the cameras per month would be $19,000, and the net revenue per month would be about $50,808. For Kent Kangley Road and 116th Avenue, they figured out about 387 infractions a month. The revenue for the infractions would be about $52,632 a month. The cost for the camera per month is $19,000, and the net revenue per month is about $33,632. At the intersection at South 228th Street and 68th Avenue South, they figured about 479.7 infractions a month. Revenue for the infractions is about $65,239. The cost for the camera per month is $19,000, and the net revenue per month would equal out to be about $46,239. At South 212th Street and 68th Avenue South, they figured out to be about 598 infractions a month.
Wow.
The revenue for the infractions would be about $81,314. The cost for the cameras per month is $21,000, and the net revenue per month is about $60,314. So if you look at all 24 approaches at the 6 intersections, the estimated net revenue for the year would be about $3.276 million. You would have to take out then the cost for the police to review it on overtime. They review all of those infractions on overtime, which is about $192,000 a year if you add in these extra cameras. And then there's additional costs for the court of about $143,000 to include an FTE to help, get the tickets through the system. And then we would also, if at some point we go to and increase these, we would have to redo our contract with Bieren Mobility because we'd have to add in all the new cameras. Plus, we would have to make it another 5-year contract because that's the way they do their business. So do you have any questions for me?
All right, we're going to start with Councilmember Fincher.
ChiefHemmen, would you please repeat the very last numbers, the one for 212th Street and 68th Ave South?
Yep, the estimated infractions is 598 a month. The revenue for the infractions is about $81,314. The cost for the cameras per month is $21,000, and the net revenue per month is about $60,314.
Thank you.
Councilmember Larmer.
So obviously, the intent is always for public safety and to reduce the number. Do we have an idea, once we install the cameras, how much the infractions drop? Is that factored into this, or?
Of how many that would drop if it's doing what it should be doing?
Yeah.
Right? I don't have that data.
Okay.
I know that Chief Padilla looked at the data from the last couple years of the ones that we have right now. And the amount of infractions has decreased. I just don't know what that percentage is.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is similar to Councilman Larmer. I'm just be interested to know, I mean, it is about public safety, right? So if the number's going down, will we consider moving the camera, right? I don't really know an answer there right now, but just similar to what she was asking. And then I'm assuming that once we put these up, it'll be like a warning for X amount of days or months, whatever, like we have done before in the past.
Yeah, it'd be the same thing. It would be, I think last time we did a 1-month warning period. And then also if once a contract is completed, it would take about 6 months from the time of a contract being signed before they can get all of the equipment they would need and work with Public Works to get them put in.
Okay. I've been pretty lucky in Kent, but renting seemed to get me a lot, so I don't know why renting get me what they do, so thank you.
I know the mayor calls this the volunteer program, and I think Councilmember Larmer, you volunteered for the program. So. Councilmember Fincher.
You're right. On the other end, do you happen to know, do we get repeaters? So Joe Blow, he's done it 5 times, and so he's had to pay 5 times? Or do we find that most people, once they are contributing, they decide that they're not going to contribute as much? Listen to my council member over there, I think maybe not.
Well, it sounds like they have more knowledge of it. We don't know because we don't really keep track of that, at least on the police side. We just go through each thing, press a button, and it sends it right to the court. So we don't really keep track if they're the same people or not.
Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Madam President. For the record, I do not run red lights. No, I'm wondering how you chose these intersections to study.
Well, our traffic sergeant really sat down with traffic engineering to try to figure out where the most accidents occurred. And those are the 6 intersections that besides the 6 we already have, of the ones that have the most accidents currently.
Councilmember Larmer.
Okay. I want to ask a question for the public and for myself. We talk about these being red light cameras, but these are also you stop when you turn right cameras, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, that's where I tend to contribute. So thank you for clarifying that.
Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Assistant Chief. My question, well, Councilmember Michaud asked my question, but the other part is, as Councilmember Larmer and Councilmember Boyce asked, I think it would be interesting to see how much red light cameras have impacted people's behavior, if we've seen any change and drop in revenue, and if we're starting to see less accidents. I think it'd be great to hear that before we even decide on this. I know it's also a revenue contributing factor into this, so it's a great revenue generating option, but it's good to see what we have done, how it's impacted revenue and people's behavior.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think those are some really good questions and some things to bring back. Any other questions or comments about this? So we've given you a few things that we want feedback on, just kind of a consensus. Depending on what that comes back with, are people kind of interested in moving forward with this? At some point, we can kind of continue to move in that direction. Councilmember Boyce.
Just for clarity, I mean, I think the new ones, based on the evidence, is okay. I'm more concerned about the one that we have there for a long, long time. If they are decreasing, then I'd be interested in maybe looking at removing those. But as far as the new one, they're based on the studies that you guys done, so therefore there must be a need for that. So just for clarity.
Okay, and just so asking that question as far as, looking at the data, if we see that there's been a change in behavior for those new cameras that we have, they are continuing to still pay for themselves, though, is that correct?
They are right now.
Yeah.
They are, yes.
So they are serving a purpose, but it would be nice to see that. So then, as a consensus, this is something that we are interested in moving forward with. Wonderful. All right.
All right.
Thank you so much. All right. Next up, we are going to welcome Uriel Varela to talk about the Race and Equity Strategic Plan and give us an update.
Good evening, council members and council presidents. Thank you for your time. So today I'm going to be providing you an update of what's happened in the time since I've made the last presentation. So what have we accomplished since the last presentation? Where are we now? And what's next for the strategic plan, the development of the strategic plan? So what have we accomplished? So since I last gave you an update, we completed the initial phase of the community engagement process, which we had 56 interviews in both English and Spanish during a Kent-sponsored health fair in July. We held 5 community listening sessions in English, Spanish, Kurdish, and Arabic in partnership with community-based organizations. We've had one-on-one CBO partner interviews, and we've also created this community engagement report that's available to read. So all this information that was collected through these different methodologies was used by the core team to create select areas of focus for the strategic plan. So the core team analyzed the engagement report, and these are the areas of focus based on what we heard from the community. Communication, in-language resources, equitable representation, training, and community engagement. So after we selected the areas of focus, we used a concept called targeted universalism to create the actual goals for each one of the areas of focus. I know that these are pretty tiny to read, but I'm going to go ahead and read them for you. So as far as the goal for communication, and these are preliminary goals, so we're going to be taking these goals back to the community and vetting these goals as well. So the communication goal, the preliminary communication goal is the City of Kent is committed to building an inclusive and well-informed community by working to improve communication about city services in a manner that is culturally relevant and equitable. The in-language goal is as follows. The City of Kent is committed to providing culturally relevant services and information in multiple languages. The goal for equitable representation is as follows. The City of Kent recruits and retains a talented workforce that is increasingly reflective of the community demographics across all positions from frontline staff, advisory boards and commissions to executive leadership. The training goal is as follows. The City of Kent will provide training that fosters constructive communication and cross-cultural understanding for city representatives and the broader community. And finally, the community engagement goal is as follows. The City of Kent engages in relationship building through dialogue, outreach, and inclusion while adapting to diverse community priorities. So these are the preliminary goals that were created through using the targeted universalism concept, and I can share more information about what that means. It's a combination between universal and targeted approaches. So where are we now? As I mentioned, we're going to go back to the community, to the stakeholders who we listened to, and we're going to be presenting to them the community engagement report and essentially asking, did we get this right? We're also sharing the areas of focus that I've mentioned, as well as the preliminary goals that I just shared with you all. And like I said, the question that we're asking is this the right approach to the strategic plan? We have 3 scheduled opportunities for these vetting sessions. The first one is going to be on December 1st from 6:30 to 8 p.m. This will be held in English. The second one will be on Saturday, December 4th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. This will be held in Spanish. And finally, we're going to have another one on December 9th from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. And this is going to be the community-based organization group that's going to be looking at, again, the community engagement report, the areas of focus, and the preliminary goals that were created by the core team. Oh, any questions?
You're probably going to get to this. When I think of your goals, right, I think of SMART goals, right, for it's been specific, measurable, blah, blah, blah. So are those part of this here time?
Are you asking if we're going to have measurable outcomes? Yes. So once we create we co-design with the stakeholder group and the core team, we're going to create measurable outcomes for each one of the action items that follow underneath each one of the goals. Okay. So we're definitely going to be measuring what the effect that these action items have on reaching that goal.
Okay.
Councilmember Core.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Uriel, for this presentation. My question is, are you doing these sessions in person, or are they also virtual or
They're going to be
hybrid?
virtual, so we
Okay.
asked our stakeholders if they wanted to do it in person or virtual. They all selected virtual presentation, so it's going
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's next? So the core team will analyze the vetting report. So a report is going to be created after the vetting sessions that the core team can now look at and make the edits if we need to make any. An important new part of this strategic plan and I guess the strategy for the strategic plan is that we're adding a co-designing element to the process when it comes to creating the action item. So this is something that we heard multiple times from a lot of different stakeholders that they wanted to be included in the co-creation of the action items that are going to be part of the strategic plan. So that element is going to add time because it takes time to schedule meetings between the core team and the stakeholder team. So I'll share a little bit more of what the timeline looks like in the next slide. We're going to be recruiting a stakeholder group with 5 representatives from community-based organizations, local community-based organizations, and 5 residents. We currently have 5 who have agreed to participate, so we're still looking for 5 more. The stakeholder group and the core team will co-design the action items, which will have measurable outcomes. And I'm going to be coming back to council and presenting and updating you by area of focus. So let's say that communication might be the first one, so I'm going to come with you with communication, the goal, the final goal for the communication, the area of focus, as well as the action items and the measurable outcomes from those action items. So it's going to be goal by goal. And this is what the preliminary schedule looks like for the co-designing of the action items. So there's going to be an onboarding session where we're going to be streamlining the Kent 101 workshop. So 9 weeks into 2 hours? That's going to be really difficult, but I'm working with our community engagement coordinator, Maria Tisok, who led the Kent 101 series this past year. The co-creating framework, we have to figure out how to approach that between the core team and the stakeholder groups. So when you have a group of 20 people trying to decide on action items, it takes a really creative type of framework to get that done. So that's going to be done in February. The co-designing of action items will happen from March to July. And again, council will receive an update after each action items have been created and we have the measurable outcomes. Finally, the community vetting sessions will start in July and go through August, where we're presenting essentially the entire strategic plan to them with goals, action items, and measurable outcomes. And there's going to be time for plan revisions after we do those vetting sessions, and finally we'll come back and present to council the full plan. And that is my update for to you.
Thank you very much for that update. Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, good job. Appreciate that. When you talk about a strategic plan, I mean, it could take a long time. Sometimes you can lose momentum. So I don't know if you thought about it. I think, you start talking to your core team, how you're going to keep them gelled and together, because this plan can take a while, and you don't want to lose momentum for us, making sure you're keeping them engaged and so on.
I think it was more difficult to keep them engaged at the beginning.
Okay.
Now you're hitting that stride now where there's going to be a lot more involvement and creation of those goals.
Yeah.
So I'm not concerned about that.
Okay.
As far as the timeline, initially when we started this work, I mentioned that typically it takes about 2 years to get something done,
right.
A strategic plan. So we're around that time.
Okay.
So adding the co-creation piece to this process is what elongated the timeline, but I think it's an important piece that was asked by the community.
Okay, thank you so much.
Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you. Uriel, when we talked about extending the overall timeline to that 2 years now, I know that we had talked at the time about there were some action items that we were interested in seeing movement on before.
Yes.
And I know like one of them was, procurement reviews and hiring reviews. Where are we at with those action items?
So I've been working with HR for the hiring reviews, and we've made some changes already. As far as the procurement, I think that may fall under one of the action items for the strategic plan because it takes more collaboration and more between departments to figure that out. So I have been working on additional items that were part of the equity matrix, including the limited English proficiency policy. So I've been working on that as well, and making sure that we're ready to do the translation in January, and make sure that each department has the right, instructions to make it easier to select the documents that should be translated. So a lot of that work is still going on, including internal work with different departments when they need my help. So a lot of that is continuing to happen, and the next update, I can provide you with the list of those items that have already been completed. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions or feedback? All right. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And then the last item on our agenda is information only on litter signage, and this came from conversations in our budget workshop.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council President and Council. You'll see on the screen I brought a figure showing our existing deployment of litter signs throughout the city. This is an item that came up during the budget workshop, and a question on just our general response to litter throughout the city, and if it would be helpful to add signage throughout other parts of the town where we're having repeated dumping. So I went and talked to our crew that takes care of the litter and asked them about where we have signs currently. They gave me this. I didn't know where all our locations were. I didn't count all these. It's probably about 40 or 50 signs, sets of signs, excuse me. And we do have on there information about fines and the issues, or the warning of what will happen if you do litter. Problem. What I found out is that we've installed a number of these just in the last couple of years trying to reduce litter. The feedback I got from the group was it hasn't helped. And in fact, there were a couple places where they said it helped for a little while, and then once they determined that, there's really not a camera on, the incidents actually went up in some places. Several of the signs got used to tie off, so that people would show up with like a tarp, tie off to the sign base, and then leave the litter right in front of the sign. So as a solution, it's not something that we're thinking is going to work.
Councilmember Boyce.
I think we kind of knew this going in. We just thought it may help. So what would it take to put a camera on some of those?
Yeah, the issue we might have is something, if you give more time to talk with both law and the police department, depends on what we use. I mean, we can use cameras with batteries, but prosecution can be pretty difficult. And we're going to be trying to find people, got game cameras, or we could put up video, but then we've got public records issues, finding the right person, is this the description? So let me look into that and I'll.
I mean, what would the difference between that and the red light cameras, right? I mean, I don't know if there's any similarity, but people run the red light camera, we got the evidence by looking at the camera. I don't know why that wouldn't work in littering.
Yeah, and I won't put Pat on the.
I want to put him on the spot. But okay.
I know on a red light camera, you're in essence you're going after the car,
RCW.
and if the driver says no, that's not me.
Yep.
Well, and those pay for themselves. Where I feel that this would
just a
become
battery
an
camera.
expense. Yeah.
I don't know.
But then somebody has to, redact things. But Councilmember Larmer.
Yeah, to that point about cameras, it does seem to me that, okay, they're ignoring a sign, but I would think that if the sign referenced you are being watched and you are on camera, they might be a little less inclined to strap a tarp to the sign. So I think it could still maybe potentially be a little bit more effective deterrent, perhaps.
Yeah, and we've tried not to put warnings on that say that cameras are observing the area if they're not. Just because then when we have it up, we've got an issue where we're being truthful. So we'll look into it and come back.
Great.
Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you. In checking this before, part of the problem was what the police and legal could find in doing, especially when, because sometimes, I mean, we have had residents send in pictures of people who were dumping, and we weren't able to get them. So maybe to see if there's some creative solution, something that they're doing in other cities that we're missing, but to also be sure to loop in PD and legal on that, just for a hopeful solution, so that we can, and our judges.
We've had stolen, what we thought was stolen garbage, right? Why would anybody steal garbage? But there was dumping and it included names and addresses. So it was probably stolen mail and then thrown in with the dumping site. So it does get complicated.
Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, the thing that makes the red light cameras effective, or even, I hate to use the word profitable, that's a bad word, I guess, but the amount of traffic that you have going through those lights, as opposed to we're looking for one person dumping off a sofa or something. But if you're going to ever do that, you'd want to do it like on your high concentration there along Crow Road, or what I think you call 97th Avenue, across the high school stadium. Because here we spent over $1 million getting that canyon all nice and really beautiful, and there's dumping already again, and it just, I drive by there every day. It just drives me nuts. Let me ask you a different question. My neighbor at the bottom of his driveway, somebody has dumped off a sofa and a chair. Do I contact you on that, Chad?
You can call us, 5600 or 253-856-5600, the main number for operations, and we will come pick it up.
Okay. Call you tomorrow. Thank you.
And I know Councilmember Fincher mentioned, what are other cities doing? We can't be the only city that has this problem. So I'd be curious to know how other cities are curbing, dealing with this situation. We will be fortunate to have litter cleanup added to our budget in the future. So we will be able to kind of tackle some of that. But that hopefully doesn't encourage people to feel that they can just continue to put their garbage wherever they want to. So definitely be curious to see what other cities are doing, if they have any kind of other tactics, but I'm sure they have the same problems.
We can include that.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments or feedback for Chad? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. This brings us to the end of our meeting. And we finished up with a few minutes to spare before we move on to our City Council workshop this evening. So for the moment, we will take a break and we are adjourned.